There is now just one juror seat left to fill before opening statements can begin. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight.
The court set 3 more jurors, bringing the total to 15. If the last panel member is seated tomorrow, it will pave the way for the trial to start next week.
Okay, we did get an answer from the Supreme Court on the defense's request to delay the retrial. On Monday, Reed's team submitted a stay of the state court of proceedings. Today, the High Court announced that justices have declined to take up that request. So what that means, full steam ahead once we have a jury.
However, the U.S. Supreme Court still has to decide whether it will take up Reed's appeal on double jeopardy grounds. Reed is trying to get 2 of her 3 charges dismissed, including murder. A SCOTUS conference is set for April 25th.
15, how does that feel?
Feels good. It feels good. It's almost the exact same pace as last year. I feel good about all of them. I feel some I didn't, and they're not our jurors.
All right, counsel wanted to see me?
I did, Your Honor. Judge, as I indicated in an email that I sent to your clerk last night and copied to Commonwealth.
I have not seen the email.
Okay, well, I'll explain what was in it. Essentially, I was alerting the court that I would like to be heard prior to the start of testimony today. Because since Katie McLaughlin testified on Thursday and Friday, we received a deluge of photographs that put her with Caitlin Albert on many different occasions after they graduated high school. We received information from their high school yearbook that they were more than just acquaintances in high school. They were teammates on the track team. And even after I sent that email with the photographs that I attached to it, late last night we received another photo where Katie McLaughlin and Caitlin Albert are standing next to each other in a photo at a baby shower in June of 2021, about 8 months before John O'Keefe's death. It's very clear to us that Katie McLaughlin perjured herself, and I wanted to discuss the issue of the admissibility of not only the photographs that we're now providing that we just received over the weekend, but I also want to resurrect the admissibility of H, I, J, and K for identification. And I think a discussion of this, Your Honor, needs to start with what court orders are currently in place. The leading case with regard to the provision of reciprocal discovery when the defense is offering...
Oh, so you want to get back to Rule 14, the Rule 14 issue?
It is a Rule 14 issue.
Okay.
That's supplemented by...
Hold on one second. So on top of that, we can discuss this later. I'd like to get the trial started.
That's fine, Your Honor. My belief, my strong belief, is that we need to determine this today. And the reason is that Caitlin Albert is coming up as a witness for the Commonwealth. She faces the same areas of cross-examination that Katie McLaughlin faced, and these photos are relevant to her cross-examination.
Okay. All right. So aside from the Rule 14 issue, I also think this is cumulative. I don't have the email. I do have the photos, but we can address this. When do you expect the Albert? I'm sorry. What's her name?
Caitlin Albert.
Caitlin Albert.
I'd say midweek, probably. It depends on how far we get today.
So we'll address this either today or tomorrow.
Thank you.
Please state your name and spell your last name.
Yes, my name is Paul Gallagher, last name Gallagher.
And how are you employed, sir?
I'm a lieutenant with the Canton Police Department.
And how long in total have you been a member of the Canton Police Department?
A total of 32 years, 2 years as a permanent intermittent officer, 30 years full-time.
And you indicated that you are a lieutenant, is that correct?
That is correct.
And how long have you held the rank of lieutenant?
I was promoted to lieutenant August 1st of 2021.
What did you do with Canton Police prior to becoming lieutenant?
I was the detective sergeant from 2018 until I was promoted in 2021.
And what is it, just starting with that, what is it that a detective sergeant does?
So when a patrolman takes an initial report, anything that needs follow-up, the detective sergeant makes sure It's assigned to a detective, usually the next detective working, and make sure that all the steps are taken to manage the cases and bring it to fruition, if possible.
And what is it, sort of, what are your general duties and responsibilities as a lieutenant with Ken?
Currently, I am in charge of internal affairs, background checks, patrol, and I oversee detectives.
You say currently, what was it prior?
I was promoted in 2021. At that time, Lieutenant Gallagher was the lieutenant in charge of detectives. We have since had a change of police, and our assignments have changed.
Now, were you working with Canton Police on the morning of January 29th, 2022?
I was.
And at some point, did you receive a phone call?
I did.
And about what time was that, and who called?
That was shortly after 6 a.m. It was Sergeant Sean Goode.
And he's a member of your department as well?
He is. He's the 12 to 8 supervisor, which our shifts actually run 11:45 p.m. to 7:45 a.m., but we call it the 12 to 8 shift.
And what, if anything, was indicated to you in this call from Sergeant Goode?
Sergeant Goode told me he was responding to a scene where a party was found unconscious, possibly not breathing in the snow. He stated his name was John O'Keefe. He was a Boston police officer who resided on Meadows Ave. He further told me that he had gotten a call earlier about John O'Keefe not returning home that night. His friends had called the hospitals, then they called the police, then they went out and looked for him, and they found him unconscious and not breathing in the snow.
And based on that information, what, if anything, did you?
I told him I would respond.
Where were you initially responding to?
I was initially responding to Meadows Ave. I misinterpreted when he said he was a Boston police officer on Meadows Ave. I thought they discovered him on Meadows Ave.
And subsequently, did you learn a different location and respond to that location?
I did.
What was that location that you subsequently determined was where you were going?
When I called the dispatch to find out the exact address, I was told it was 32 Fairview Road.
And that was from the dispatch, is that correct?
That's correct. It was Officer Dever who answered the phone.
That would be Officer Kelly Dever, is that correct?
That is correct.
About what time was it that you arrived on Fairview Road that morning?
I arrived shortly after 7 a.m.
And when you arrived, what, if anything, was it that you observed upon your arrival?
There were some vehicles pulling away, but parked by where the scene was were 3 Canton police vehicles and 1 black Toyota pickup truck that is assigned to our detectives.
And who, if anyone else, from your department was there at that time?
When I arrived, the 3 marked units were occupied by Officer Mullaney, Officer Saraf, Sergeant Goode, and the Toyota pickup was driven there by Detective Sergeant Lank.
Lieutenant, during the time that you were on scene, with reference to the neighborhood in general, how many people did you observe sort of come out of their house at any point in time that you were with?
I didn't observe anybody ever come out of their house.
And that includes the residents that you were in front of, as well as any other residences along that street, is that correct?
That is correct.
Good morning, Lieutenant.
Good morning.
When was the first time you were ever interviewed about your conduct on this case, your involvement in this case?
I don't recall.
It was about a month ago, wasn't it? April 3rd, 2024?
When I was interviewed by, I don't know who you're referring to.
A formal interview by any law enforcement agency.
Oh, I was never, until about a month ago, trial prep, I was not interviewed, correct.
And that interview was conducted by whom?
I met at the DA's office with the prosecutor, Adam Lally.
And there was also a state trooper there?
There was.
Lieutenant Tully?
Correct.
Okay. So Michael Proctor never formally interviewed you about your involvement in the case?
No, sir.
Never interviewed you about your involvement on the morning of January 29th, 2022?
No, sir.
Never interviewed you about your recovery of any physical evidence at the scene?
No, sir.
Which would include the blood stains as well as the piece of drinking glass?
That's correct.
Okay. Never interviewed you about where that evidence ultimately went and how it made its way back to Canton Police Department?
He never interviewed me, no.
And his partner, Yuri Buknik, also, I won't go through the litany of things, never interviewed you as well.
Correct.
Thank you. And until April 3rd, 2024, nobody from the DA's office had interviewed you either.
That's correct.
Did you write a report about your involvement in the case?
Not on that particular day.
Did you write a report after that?
Yes,
When did you write that report?
possibly January 2023. I believe it was the request for the metadata, the acquisition of the photos report.
Okay, fair enough. Did you ever, I'll narrow my question. Did you ever write a report about your involvement on the day at the scene?
No, I did not.
Okay. So that's not documented, at least by you, that's not documented anywhere.
That's correct.
Did you take notes when you were at the scene?
No,
Did you go back to the station and memorialize your findings and your conduct at the scene by taking notes back at the station?
no, I did not.
So you have no notes and no report about anything that happened at Fairview on the 29th?
Not myself, no.
Were you ever instructed by any superior? You're pretty high up in the ranks. You reported to whom?
At that time, I reported to the chief of deputy chief of police.
Right, either the deputy chief or the chief.
Correct.
Did either the deputy chief or the chief instruct you, Lieutenant, don't worry about writing a report in this case?
No, they never said anything like that.
You would agree that it's one thing to respond to a scene, it's another thing to actually gather evidence at a scene.
That's correct.
Especially a scene where it's a potential, at that time, a potential homicide of a police officer.
That's correct.
Part of the reason for annotating, memorializing exactly what evidence is recovered is so you can relay that to other officers, correct?
Correct.
So for instance, in your direct examination just a few minutes ago, you said that you went back to the scene at one point. What was the date where the drone was considered?
February 1st.
You go back to the scene on February 1st. That's 3 full days after the event, correct?
That is correct.
After the incident. And you said, I directed them to where John O'Keefe's body was found, correct?
Yeah, I showed him, yes.
But in fact, you never saw John O'Keefe's body, did you?
That's correct.
Okay, so you were giving them information that you had about which you had no personal knowledge, correct?
I had knowledge from other officers. I did not see John O'Keefe at the scene. He was transported to the hospital. That is correct.
Who was it that told you specifically where John O'Keefe's body was?
I don't recall specifically. I had a collaborative meeting with Sergeant Lank and Sergeant Goode.
Were you aware at the time that you had the meeting with Sergeant Lank that Sergeant Lank did not ever see John O'Keefe's body in the position?
Yes, I did. I don't believe Sergeant Goode did, to my knowledge. I believe John O'Keefe may have been in the ambulance at that time.
John O'Keefe, I'm sorry, I got a little confused. John O'Keefe may have been in the ambulance at which time?
When some of the officers arrived.
Okay, so if that were the case, then they wouldn't have any personal knowledge of where John O'Keefe's body was either.
Not to your precise locations, yes.
So you couldn't determine exactly how he was positioned, right?
Not precisely.
From head to toe, right?
Not precisely.
Where his arms or his hands were.
That is correct, yes.
He's a 6'2" man, correct?
I don't know.
You don't even know that?
I don't know his size, no.
If I told you that he's over 6 feet tall, would you have any quarrel with that?
If Mr. Lally told me, I would take it as fact.
Fair enough. For purposes of my question, you don't want to take my word for it, but for purposes of this question, assuming that he's over 6 feet tall, there's a better than 6 foot margin for where he would be situated in the snow, correct? From toe to head.
Correct.
And the details matter in a case like this. Any investigation, the details matter.
Sure they do.
Accuracy is vital in a homicide investigation, correct?
Correct.
You did find some blood droplets. We saw it on the screen, correct?
Correct.
You also found part of a drinking glass, correct?
That is correct.
Did you did you endeavor to make a diagram of exactly where those items were found?
No.
Before responding to 34 Fairview, and you indicated that you were told to respond to 32 Fairview, right?
That is correct.
That was a mistake on either dispatch's part or something.
Correct.
You figured out where to go once you got there.
You can tell by the emergency lights.
It was Sergeant Goode who contacted you, correct?
That is correct.
And you were at home at the time,
That is correct.
which is why you needed to respond to Canton PD to get some foul weather gear, correct?
Correct.
You also contacted Brian Albert's neighbor, a gentleman by the name of Tom Gallagher, correct?
That is correct.
And you wanted to let him know that you were responding over to the scene.
Yes, he was the lieutenant in charge of detectives at the time.
Lieutenant in charge of detectives and also the man who lived directly across the street from Brian Albert, correct?
I would say there's two property lines he's directly across from, 32 and 34.
Okay.
But yes, that vicinity.
Okay. Is there a reason that you didn't contact Chief Berkowitz on that day to let him know where you were responding? Why did you pick Deputy Chief Gallagher?
Because that would be my next call. Like I said, he is the lieutenant in charge of detectives at the time. We were responding to a possible crime scene, a possible unattended death. He would be my call.
The normal chain of command?
Correct.
Okay. But you knew at the time that Chief Berkowitz was actually out on leave, having been injured on duty in some way?
I don't recall that. Chief Berkowitz is always present.
Not only did you respond to the scene, but either you were tasked by one of your superiors, or you, as the ranking officer on the. I guess I should ask this first. Forgive me. Were you the ranking officer on scene when you arrived?
Yes, sir, I was.
So either having been tasked by one of your superiors, or because you were the ranking officer on scene, did you take over the coordination of the preservation of that crime scene?
Yes, I did.
So others were sort of answering to you.
Correct.
You indicated that you had never preserved a crime scene in the snow before.
That's correct.
30 years plus, and your policing experiences here in the Boston area?
Correct.
Snow's a lot.
Sure.
In 30 plus years, you've never processed a crime scene in the snow?
No, I have not.
Lucky you.
Well, we don't typically process our own crime scenes. Sometimes we use the state police, sometimes we use Plymouth County detectives.
So save the state police, or setting them aside because they were not tasked on this call yet.
Correct.
You were then in charge of preserving this crime scene, right?
That's correct.
What exactly did you do, if you can name the categories? What exactly did you do to actually preserve the entire crime scene?
Sure. I can tell you that I had Sergeant Goode move all the cars so I could photograph the scene, documented by photo evidence. I told Detective Sergeant Lake, make sure he has initial statements from everybody present. And that's basically what we did prior to searching the scene itself.
With regard to Sergeant Lang, you told him to make sure that we had statements, your words, we had statements from all the witnesses that were at the scene.
Initial statements, yes.
Does that mean the people inside the house?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe people across the street, if there were people across the street?
No, it didn't include them at the time. It included people that were involved from the prior night's incident outing, I would call it.
At the time that you tasked Sergeant Lang with this responsibility, did you know personally that you were standing on the property of Brian Albert?
I did.
Did you also know that Sergeant Lang had an ongoing and a long-time relationship with the Albert family?
Objection.
Did you know that?
I know he knew them. I think you're mischaracterizing the relationship.
Did you see a problem with having somebody who knew the parties taking the initial statements from those parties?
Not at all. Sergeant Lake, no issue at all.
Not in your mind?
Not in my mind.
Were you aware that before you got to the location, that that Sergeant Lank had taken it upon himself to already make contact with the individuals in the house?
Objection.
I'm going to see you at sidebar, please.
Lieutenant, just before we went to sidebar, I'd asked a quick question. Were you aware at the time that you tasked Sergeant Lank to go talk to the folks inside the house that he had already gone into the house to talk to them?
Yes, I did.
Wouldn't you want to make sure that anybody from the civilian side and or officers don't just start traipsing through the middle of the crime scene?
That was all done.
The EMTs had already done what they needed to do in the scene, and Mr. O'Keefe had been transported to the hospital, correct?
That is correct.
So that was not a concern.
No,
So nobody needed to be inside that scene that wasn't authorized to be there,
that's correct.
civilian or officers.
That's correct.
Here's how Higgins explained his employment status on the stand.
I'm assigned to division operations at this time.
Okay, what does that mean?
That's,
You're taken out of the field?
was I taken out of the field? Yes.
We've tried to find out if Higgins still works at ATF, even requested his payroll records. We've gotten nowhere on any of that.
Well, again, remember, the government's burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. Everyone who's looked at this case knows that there are holes, big holes in this case.
We're also looking into another man Reed's defense team believes could be culpable in John O'Keefe's death, retired Boston police detective Brian Albert. O'Keefe was found dead outside Albert's former Canton home.